Let's start with the new topic. We're going to check now infinitive of purpose. First of all, what is an infinitive? We need to remember some definitions first. So usually what we define as an infinitive is it's a form of the verb, the form with to at the beginning. So to with base form is the infinitive. An important thing we need to remember, this is an infinitive: to walk, to run, to be, to eat. That's okay. That's an infinitive. These here are not infinitives. This is, for example, the base form of walk. To walk is the infinitive. Walk is the base form. An important difference there. Some people say that, no, yeah, this is the infinitive, but the infinitive without to. No, it's the base form. These here are not base forms. These are the simple present for the third person singular. He walks, she runs, it is, but that's not a base form. In the past, that's not a base form. The past participle is not a base form. The present participle is not a base form. This thing doesn't even exist. So an important thing that we need to remember here is the form of the infinitive. The infinitive is the base form of the verb preceded by to. Okay, that's an infinitive. These here are infinitives. If it's a base form, it's just the base form. It's not an infinitive. Okay, differentiate that. That's an important difference. And remember, it has to be the base form of the verb. You can never say to ate, to is, to eating, nothing. Okay, none of those options are possible. Second, purpose. What is purpose? Well, if we check the thesaurus, if we check the dictionary, we can find that a purpose is all of these things: an objective, an intent, a plan, a target, a goal, an objective that you have. That's a purpose. So essentially, the infinitive of purpose, you can find it by the definition that it's an infinitive that explains a purpose, an objective, a plan, a goal. Simple. Let's start checking some examples. I study English. That's what you're doing in this moment, right? I study English. Perfect. But why do you study English? Maybe you have some reasons. Maybe you want to investigate. Maybe you want to read more things. Maybe you want to travel. So, I'm going to explain my reasons. Why do you study English? Well, I study English because I want to read papers. That is my objective. This is an action that I do, and my goal is to read more papers. That is my objective. I study English. My objective is to read more papers. So I can combine these two things and I can create a new sentence. What is the action? I study English. And what is the objective of studying English? What is the purpose of studying English? To read more papers, more documents, more investigation articles. That's the idea. So you see, it's very simple. I have an action and I am going to explain the reason that motivated me to do this action. So that's the use of an infinitive of purpose. You explain the motivation for an action. This is the action that I do, and this is the motivation for it. One important detail. There is a very common mistake that a lot of people do, especially Spanish speakers. We speak Spanish, and that's a very common mistake that we do. Don't say for. Okay, don't say I study English for read. No, that's incorrect. What you have to say is this: I study English to read. Okay, this is a very common mistake. Don't say for and the infinitive and the base form. Okay, it's a very, very common mistake. Other examples. Different people have different motivations. So maybe I can say I study English to read more papers. But my friend tells me, no, I study English to travel abroad. Or another person tells me, oh, I study English to watch movies. Or another person probably could tell me, no, I study English because I want to flirt with people on the internet. It's up to you. You can do many different things. But that's the idea. You are explaining the motivation for your actions. Okay, you explain your objective and their motivation and the reason why you're doing the actions. More examples. I study English. What is my goal? To read more papers. We should wash our hands. What is the purpose of doing that? It's to prevent diseases. Anna puts a tag on her bag. What is the point of this? To find it when they land in the airport. Maybe she could lose her backpack. That's why she puts a tag, a thing, an object to differentiate the bag from other bags. Study and practice to get good grades. I took photos. What was my intention? To share them on Instagram. I will subscribe to this channel to learn more. Okay, so don't forget to subscribe. Now, some alternatives that you can use. Remember that you can use the infinitive of purpose, but if you want, you can put some extra decorations into your infinitive. For example, you could say, I study English to read more papers, or you could say, I study English so as to read more papers. It's the same. It's exactly the same. Study and practice to get good grades, or study and practice in order to get good grades. So you could use both. Don't forget, you can use the infinitive of purpose, and if you want, you can add some decorations. You could say in order to, or so as to. Okay, it's the same, but don't forget always verb with base form. Okay, to and the verb with base form. So as to and the verb in base form. In order to and the verb in base form. Now, some details about changing the position of the motivation. You could use the standard structure is to put the complement at the end. So we should wash our hands. We should wash our hands. What is the purpose of that? To prevent diseases. But if you want, you can move this at the beginning. So you could say, to prevent diseases, we should wash our hands. But an important thing, you need to use a comma. Okay? Whenever you start with something else that is not the subject, because this is the subject, you have to use a comma. In this case, to prevent diseases is part of the complement. So when you put it at the beginning, you have to put a comma. Okay, it's a very simple aspect. And one more thing, you can also use negative infinitives. The infinitive in negative is the same. The only difference is that you are implying a motivation for something and in a negative way. Example, I took photos of my summer vacation. Why? To remember that trip. I took photos of my summer. Why? Not to forget that trip. So you see, the way you make an infinitive negative is just putting not in front of the infinitive. So not to. More examples. I took photos of my summer, not to forget that trip. We bought food. What was the purpose of that? Not to cook today. We didn't want to cook that day. He went out not to think about his problems. He was maybe stressed and he preferred to go for a walk. You should drink coffee, not to sleep early. Sometimes you want to pull an all-nighter, so in those cases you probably could say, yeah, let's drink some coffee so I don't sleep. So you see, you explain your motivation. You should drink coffee. Why? Not to sleep. So remember, you can also use the infinitives in negative. Summary. First, let's remember, infinitives of purpose indicate a goal. You're indicating the motivation for another action. For example, why should we wash our hands? We should wash our hands because we want to prevent diseases. If you want, you could say because we want to, but you can use the infinitive of purpose instead of that. And you could say, we should wash our hands to prevent diseases. So you see, you can use the complete sentence with because, or you can just use the infinitive of purpose. Number 2, we can use so as, to, and, or in order to. So you could say, I study English so as to read more papers, or you could say, I study English in order to read more papers. Number 3, we can start the sentence with a purpose, but we need a comma. So you could say, to become an investigator, Mary will apply to a scholarship. So you see, or if you want, you could change the positions and you could say it in the normal way. You could say, Mary will apply to a scholarship to become an investigator. But the important thing here is that you have to remember to put, don't forget please to use your comma. Okay, that's an important thing. You need to use the comma. And finally, infinitives of purpose can be negative. So if you want, you could say, not to spread diseases, we should stay home. Or if you want, you can change the positions. We should stay home, not to spread diseases. And that's it. So remember, the infinitive of purpose indicates the purpose of a goal. Okay, it indicates a goal. It indicates a purpose. It indicates the motivation for an action. Okay, you can change positions and it can be negative, and you could use some other alternatives. That's it with infinitive of purpose. Okay, so that's it for this part. Don't forget please to study and wash your hands. Bye bye.